He was born into slavery, torn from his mother, forbidden to read and beaten for trying, but Frederick Douglass refused to be broken. He secretly taught himself to read and write, knowing that knowledge was power. He tried to escape more than once, and failed. But he never gave up. On September 3, 1838, disguised as a sailor, he boarded a train in Baltimore, making it to New York. But he didn't just run to freedom. He turned around and fought for others still in chains. Once free, he became a voice that thundered through America. His speeches exposed the cruelty of slavery, his words shook presidents, his autobiography sold thousands of copies giving a face to the enslaved. He met with Lincoln, advised presidents, demanded justice for black Americans, both enslaved and free, and he never stopped using his pen and voice as weapons of truth. From slave to statesman, from bondage to the White House, Frederick Douglass didn't just escape, he became a legend. The year is 1655, they were enslaved, but they refused to stay that way. In the mountains of Jamaica, escaped Africans vanished into the jungle, and were reborn as warriors. They called themselves the Maroons, former slaves who knew the land better than any British soldier ever could. They built hidden villages deep in the rainforest. They learned to move without sound, to strike without warning. And when the British tried to crush them, the Maroons fought back with ambushes, traps, and jungle warfare, so effective, the empire was humiliated. 2 brutal wars followed, the strongest empire on earth, against people who had already lost everything, and refused to lose their freedom. In the end, the British were forced to do the unthinkable. They signed treaties recognizing Maroon independence, not because they wanted to, but because they could not defeat them. Who decides when you are free, you or power? In 1911, Laura Nelson and her 12-year-old son, LD, lived quietly on a small farm near Okima, Oklahoma. They were a black family surrounded by white neighbors, surviving in a world still poisoned by hate. When a cow went missing, they were accused of theft, with almost no evidence. Both were arrested and jailed. But justice never came. On the night of May 24th, a mob of white men broke into the jail. They dragged Laura and her son 6 miles to a bridge over the North Canadian River. What happened next was unspeakable. Reports say Laura was assaulted before she and LD were both hanged. Some accounts even say the boy was mutilated before he died. Photographs of their bodies were turned into postcards, got passed around as souvenirs. No one was punished. No one was charged. Laura and LD Nelson's story faded from history books, but their memory stands as a haunting reminder of the violence that shaped America, and the silence that followed. Do you know who captured the boy Herman Lehman in 1870s Texas? It was an Apache warrior named Chivato. Born into the fierce struggle between his people and U.S. expansion, Chivato grew up in a world of constant raids, survival, and resistance. He earned respect as a skilled fighter and leader, taking part in battles that defined the Apache fight for freedom. During one of these raids, Chivato took young Herman Lehman alive, pulling him into Apache life. But this was only one chapter of his remarkable story. Few know that Chivato later switched sides, becoming a scout for the U.S. Army, fighting against his own people, even tracking Geronimo. Haunted by the destruction of Apache life, he lived through the violent clash of 2 worlds, carrying both loyalty and betrayal on his shoulders. In old age, Chivato shared his experiences in a rare autobiography, offering one of the few first-hand Apache perspectives of that time. His life was filled with contradictions: raider, warrior, scout, survivor. But through it all, Chivato remained a living symbol of the Apache struggle to endure. This man shot a U.S. Army officer point blank and walked free. His name was Plenty Horses, a Lakota Sioux who had just returned from years at the Carlisle Indian School, where native children were stripped of their language, culture, and identity. But when he came back to South Dakota, he returned to bloodshed. The Wounded Knee Massacre had just occurred. Hundreds of Lakota men, women, and children, unarmed, were gunned down by U.S. troops. Tensions were at a boiling point. And just days later, Plenty Horses approached Lieutenant Edward Casey and pulled the trigger. He was immediately arrested. The U.S. government wanted to make an example of him, charge him with murder. But then, something unexpected happened. His lawyers made a bold argument. If the U.S. was at war with the Lakota, then what Plenty Horses did wasn't murder. It was war. And the court agreed. In 1891, a jury acquitted him. Because convicting Plenty Horses would have meant admitting that the massacre at Wounded Knee wasn't just a tragedy, it was an act of war. Should he have been punished, or was justice served? Let us know in the comments. It's 1850. This girl was just 13 when her life was torn apart. Her family was traveling west when they were attacked by a Native American tribe. Most were killed. Olive Oatman and her sister were spared, but only to be enslaved. She was dragged across the desert, starved and beaten. Her captors traded her like property, forcing her into servitude. Eventually she was sold to the Mojave people, who did something even more unexpected. They tattooed her chin with indigo ink, marking her as one of their own. She lived with them for 5 years, ate their food, spoke their language, wore their clothes, and when American authorities came to rescue her, she hesitated. The girl who had once been enslaved had become part of the tribe. When she finally returned to white society, people were obsessed. Her tattoo made her a living mystery. She gave public lectures, wrote a best-selling book, but she never spoke badly of the Mojave. To her dying day, no one really knew. Was she a prisoner, or had she become something more? This boy was kidnapped and forced into a world completely unlike his own. In 1870, at just 11 years old, Herman Lehman was taken by Apache warriors in Texas. Ripped from his German-American family, he would spend the next 9 years living as a Native American. First adopted by the Apaches, Herman was trained as a warrior, learning their language, customs, and survival skills. He took part in raids and battles, eventually becoming so assimilated he forgot his native tongue and identity. Later, he was captured by the Comanche and adopted again, this time by a chief who treated him like a son. When the U.S. Army found him at age 20, Herman no longer saw himself as white. Reuniting with his birth family was painful. He struggled to reconnect, caught between two worlds that both claimed him, yet neither truly felt like home. Would you have stayed with your new tribe, or gone back to the family you barely remembered? This man was born into slavery, forced to serve, forbidden to read, and owned like property. His name, Bass Reeves. But fate had something else in store. During the Civil War, he escaped into Indian Territory, learning languages, survival skills, and how to handle a rifle with deadly precision. When slavery ended, Bass didn't disappear into obscurity. He became a U.S. Deputy Marshal, one of the first black lawmen west of the Mississippi. He arrested over 3,000 criminals during his career, bringing in murderers, thieves, and gang leaders, many of them white, without ever being wounded in a gunfight. He rode with 2 Colt pistols on his hips, knew how to track a man for miles, and often used disguises to outsmart his targets. Despite the danger, Bass never backed down. He even had to arrest his own son for murder, and did it with the same iron will. A lawman feared by outlaws, respected by all, and the inspiration behind the legend of the Lone Ranger. This couple didn't just escape slavery, they outsmarted an entire system built to keep them captive. William and Ellen Craft were married, but enslaved. Ellen was light-skinned enough to pass as white, so they came up with a plan so bold it sounded impossible. She disguised herself as a sick, wealthy white man, arm in a sling, face wrapped in bandages. William played the role of her attentive slave. In December 1848, they boarded trains, stayed in hotels, and traveled openly through the South, riding straight past danger. Every mile was a risk. One wrong word, one curious glance, and they'd be torn apart. But they stayed in character and kept moving. After 4 tense days, they reached Philadelphia, free. But their story didn't end there. They became outspoken abolitionists, fighting to end the system that once tried to own them. William and Ellen Craft didn't just run, they performed their freedom and won. At just 14 years old, Celia was purchased by a Missouri farmer named Robert Newsom. Officially, she was bought to perform household chores, but from the very night she arrived, Newsom began to abuse her. Over the years, Celia gave birth to 2 of his children. Constant reminders of his cruelty and control. Desperate for freedom, Celia pleaded with him to stop, but he refused. One night in 1855, when Newsom entered her cabin again, Celia defended herself. In that moment, she struck him with a stick, ending years of torment. She burned his body in her fireplace, hoping to hide the evidence. Celia was arrested, tried, and eventually hanged. She was only 19. Though her life ended in tragedy, her act of resistance became a symbol of courage. A reminder that even in bondage, the human spirit can still fight for dignity and justice. Do you think Celia's act was justice or desperation? Which story did you connect with the most? Let us know in the comments.